Welcome back, travelers. Today, War of the Spark. Don't leave, it's a chunk. We're going to be doing a particular set of chapters from 10 to whatever we can get to, and we'll see how that goes. Basically, let's just start it up with chapter 10, talking about Chandra. Basically, this particular chapter is just talking about how Chandra wakes up and is looking around, and all the planeswalkers that were in the embassy miraculously survive. None of them get chopped in half or lose a finger or a foot or anything. They're all just happen to be on the right side of the building or the left side and not directly in the path of the bridge. So they survive and they're communicating telepathically and they're talking about everything and they're like, okay, is everybody okay? Everybody good? Okay, good. That's literally this entire chapter. So this next chapter I thought was actually pretty cool. It's chapter 11, Nicol Bolas. And it's literally just Bolas going, do they think that I'm as dumb as I look? And basically, he's just talking about each of the different people. He says, Nilar, Bella, and the rest of their little friends actually believe they could hide themselves from Nicol Bolas. And he starts going through, like, just naming characters, going Bella and Jura, Teferi, Lavinia, Ballard, Goldmane, Karn, Vess. He goes, a new guy from Gobakon. Like, he wasn't completely aware of Teo, but Teo's basically irrelevant, and Bolas is completely aware of that. And it just kind of goes through, he talks about all the different characters, and he talks about the beacon. And you may remember that I talked about the Mox beacon, which was blue, black, red, and Bolas basically probably already knew about. The invention had been the infant dragon's failsafe plan. Yeah, and not a single pathetic excuse for a sentient being had noticed that Bolas himself had planted the idea for the beacon and were passed for Niv Mazzet's fire mind. Bolas couldn't help but smile. So here we have confirmation that what happens in the first chapter of The Gathering Storm is Bolas planting the beacon's idea into Niv Mazzet's mind. So that's basically the entirety of that chapter. Chapter 12, Jace Beleren. Okay, Jace, we're back to you, the living Guildpact, the Maya Word's magical law individual himself. Well, that doesn't really work out for him. This chapter is basically him finding out, oh, I can't do that. We can't. Oh no. And like, let me see, it's right here. Yeah. Jace steeled himself, gathering up Ravnica's magic. Something felt different. Something felt disconnected. Something felt wrong. Or maybe that was just his own insecurity, his own doubts. This was no time for that. With one last touch upon Lavinia's mind and its firm resolve, Jace Beleren summoned the full power of the living Guildpact. Dragon Nicol Bolas has murdered Ravnican citizens and interfered with the Guild Pact by destroying its embassy. As living Guild Pact, this is my decree. Close the portal. Execute Bolas. Nothing happened. Close that portal. Nothing. Execute the Dragon Nicol Bolas. Nothing. So yeah, Jace was basically useless and realizes that, and they all run away, and miraculously, none of them are killed by Nicol Bolas. Chapter 13, Gideon Jura. So Gideon basically is like, that didn't work at all, and they're all freaking out, and Gideon sees the Liliana's here, he's like, Jace, link her up, we need to catch her up, and he's like, she's on the other side, and Gideon's like, no! Dramatic pause, dramatic tears, dramatic running away and slicing through this bad guys. The Eternals have basically started pouring out of the portal. They're killing people. Everything is just terrible. Gideon's doing what he can to try and stop it. Everybody's trying to, like, basically having to, like, gather their like, recognize what's going on. People run into buildings and they're safe. They don't really know why, but the Eternals for some reason can't open doors. They're like the aliens from Signs. And that's basically what's happening in this chapter, is I'm realizing all of that. Basically, Liliana Vess is just going through her mind and talking about, like, oh, I've been doing all these things to avoid dying and growing old and all that stuff. But now I'm having to basically pay the price for all these things that I've done. But you know what? It's worth it. As long as I get to live, everyone else can die. That's literally the last line. Everyone can die as long as Liliana Vess lives. And it's really just her, like, downing on herself because of the fact that she has failed. She was supposed to become this person who was going to help them take down Bolas, and instead she's his right hand, and she's using her powers to help him. Yeah, she's hindering the Eternals by making them not go into buildings, but the fact that she is still helping him kill innocent people and is too afraid of Bolas to fight back is indicative of her weaknesses. So in chapter 15, Kaya, we basically just get a shot of Kaya going through all these different like these motions of fighting the Eternals with Raoul, and they're kind of just having to deal with it. And it's cool because it talks about how the fact that because she is the person who killed the Obsidian, all of their debts went onto her, and it felt as though her soul was being like weighed down. And this weakness placed on her kind of gets ignored halfway through the book and is brought back up at near the end when it's more relevant. But you kind of just it's a nice little touch to have her constantly being weighed down by these obligations that she was forced onto her. We are barely on the second chapter of The Gathering Storm, but as you know, Kaya does eventually kill the Obsidian and become the Guildmaster. We don't know exactly the particulars of that. Most likely, whoever killed the Obsidian would be the one who would gain it. That's just because by killing them, she gained their weight, basically, both as far as how much power they have in the guild, as well as what they owe others. So Kaya basically winds up becoming the Guildmaster because of that. That's my theory, at least. Next week we'll probably find out exactly what well, actually by the time, oh no, tomorrow we'll find out, because tomorrow is Wednesday. That's when the new chapters get released for that particular story. Kaya and Ral, they're running around, they're trying to like fight off all the Eternals, then they run into Teo and Rat, to be exact. And basically, Teo has one of those like Harry Potter moments where Ral approached, the boy exhaled and dropped his shield. The little circle of light as ear vanished too, and his shoulders slumped. He helped Kaya to her feet, her head was starting to clear, and he was looking around for the girl. Ral pulled a pair of goggles down over his eyes. He looked at the boy and stated, "You're a planeswalker." "I'm a what?" the boy asked. "How do you know he's a planeswalker?" And basically just keep going from there. And so we have Harry Potter, the shield mage, over here with Hagrid, the lightning mage, guildmaster of Zet. And they're all trying to like basically figure out what's going on. There's chaos everywhere. Kaya was getting knocked around by a Minotaur Eternal earlier, and she's okay now because obviously. And that's pretty much this chapter, is just they realize there's a giant hole in the world and there's monsters coming out of it, and they need to start working together to try and stop it. Chapter 16, Ral Zarek. Ral Zarek basically just talks about how he has these special goggles that allow him to see planeswalkers, to be able to determine whether or not they are they have a spark within them, and he's able to use that as a way to try and to like form up, basically. So he meets up. You got Gideon, you got Chandra, you got everybody basically in the same area at the same time. Everybody's there. Johnny's like, "Roar! I'm a lion. I'm awesome." And then Gideon says, "Form up!" And this, of course, causes Ral Zarek to go, "He's very impressive." And that's literally this entire chapter, was Ral Zarek seeing everybody show up and then Gideon being very impressive. So chapter 17, we finally see where Vraska is. Vraska, I don't think she's shown up at all up until this point, 90 pages in. But it does make sense, since during the Gathering Storm novel, she does do some pretty messed up stuff. So here we have Vraska, and she's on the plane of Ixalan, because she had left before the Immortal Sun went off, before all the stuff started going poopy. So this is Vraska trying to avoid the things that she's done, trying to avoid all the terrible consequences of her actions. And so she's at a pub, and she's with her pirate friends like Britches, who's a goblin. And the goblin keeps asking where Jace is, because they were all friends, and Vraska's not very happy to continuously have the little monkey goblin continuously reminding her that she betrayed Jace and Ravnica and her guild and basically everyone. And so she's sitting there, she's trying to ignore it, and she's very upset, and she talks about how like she's just remembering all the different things she did. And it mentions Zedek here, which I didn't even realize that Zedek was actually talked about in this particular chapter. That's cool. He was the one that had helped her in the second chapter of Gathering Storm. He's the guy, the mind mage. So he's the one that unlocks her thoughts. But it also says here that he was killed in her service. So I don't know what that means. Maybe he fights Mazarek. I don't get it. I guess we'll find out. It even says here that Mazarek was the master of the Erstwhile, which were the Golgari undead, all that stuff, and that Mazarek was backed by Bolas. So all that stuff kind of worked together, melded together, and it just shows you what was happening in the Gathering Storm, like why it was happening that way. But Vraska is very depressed because Zedek was her friend, Hakara, you may remember Hakara, she was her friend. She wound up dead. Sadek wound up dead. Everybody is basically around her as dead. She doesn't want to be near Jace because she loves Jace, and Jace is probably going to die, according to her. Well, she says right here at the very end, it kind of sums up. A lot of the times with these chapters, the last paragraph or so sum up really well what the whole chapter was about. So you could basically just skip through it and get to that. It says, no, there's no place for a monster like Vraska and Ravnica. Those are her thoughts. She considers herself to be that monster. It's actually kind of sad, and her character does have a bit more depth in that sense. I think I'm going to stop it there. I think we got through about 7 or 8 chapters. That's not bad. That's a lot better than having to sit through several 5-minute chapters where I try to pull out as much of the exposition and explain it as I can. This is more just a beat-by-beat kind of deal, and if there's not really much more to talk about, since those first chapters were the exposition chapters. And this is more just like, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And we will be getting to more interesting things soon, I expect. But until then, travel well.